All right. The first thing I kind of want to ask you about is, your younger days. Obviously, you
Yeah.
had successful coaching careers and now in the media business with
Yep.
ESPN. So the first thing I want to ask you is, what was your first job in the basketball world and how did you get that?
Well, let me take you back in time. I grew up in New York City. Okay. I was a basketball junkie from the time I was 12 years old. At an early age, I knew probably about the time I was about 12 or 13 or 14, I knew I wanted to coach. I played basketball. I played all sports like a lot of kids do at that age,
Mhm.
but I got really into basketball to the point where from 14 through college, I practiced every single day. Summertime, I played 5, 6 hours a day. I was a self made player. And ironically, Nate, when I went to college as a freshman at Brooklyn College, I was good enough to make the varsity, the team there. They were D3 at the time. And I could have, I know I could, I easily could have played. I'm not just saying that.
Mhm.
That's not a lot to brag about when you say you could play on a D3 team, but I had a chance to go back to my old high school as a college freshman and be the JV coach. So I decided to do that. And that got me into coaching immediately.
Right.
And then my senior year in college, I graduated in 3.5 years. A real good friend of mine from my area of New York City, he was the head coach at New York Tech, a Division II school, which was a powerhouse. And my senior year in college, I was graduating like in December.
Mhm.
And he said, "Why don't you come on board and be like a volunteer assistant?" And I decided that would be fun. By this time, I'd worked a lot of camps in the summertime to meet coaches. I went to
Yep.
North Carolina's camp, Rhode Island, all sorts of camps. And so my senior year in college, I was an assistant coach at New York Tech, and we went like 29-2, and we lost in the national championship game of Division II.
Okay.
And that was the only other loss of the season, besides losing to Boston University, a Division I team, and they,
Yep.
they had a coach by the name of Rick Pitino.
All
So,
right.
so, and because of my camp connections, I was able to be a full-time assistant, believe it or not, right out of college at Rhode Island at the age of 22.
Wow.
Very lucky. That doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
And then from there, I went to Ohio University for 6 years, Ohio State with Gary Williams, Hall of Fame coach. Went to Providence with Rick Barnes, who's
Mhm.
now at Tennessee, and ended up as the head coach at Manhattan College. So in 1992. So I spent 12 years as a Division I assistant. But I think one of the reasons I was fortunate is because I knew I always wanted to be a coach.
Right.
Like maybe like you growing up as the son of a coach.
Yeah.
I didn't have that luxury, but I just knew I wanted to be a basketball coach. So I put all my energy towards that.
Nice. So you talk about like networking at those camps and
Yes.
in the summer. So that's kind of my next question is for you, how are you networking? Because obviously then
Yes.
a lot different than now in regards to like meeting people and making connections. So I'm just kind of curious about how you went
Yeah.
about that, like at those camps.
Well, I think networking itself, getting to build relationships, is probably a centuries old um, attribute.
Right.
Probably been going on since like the Middle Ages. People help you move ahead in your career no matter what you do. So not much of that has changed. I'll tell you an interesting story. This is a long time ago now. I hate to tell you this is 42 years ago, but I was a college sophomore, and I worked North Carolina's basketball camp, and Dean Smith was the head coach. The first year assistant was a young guy named Roy Williams. Um, my roommate at the camp was a brash, fast talking guy from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. His name was John Calipari, and we've really known each other 42 years. It's crazy because we both wanted to do the same thing. But no, what I did was I wrote to coaches. Now you email them, but I think
Yep.
handwritten notes are still good. Um, so I wrote to coaches when I would go to high school basketball events in New York City where college coaches were recruiting. I'd go up to them and introduce myself, tell them who I was, tell them I wanted to get into coaching. Then in the summertime, I worked a ton of camps to get to know coaches.
Mhm.
And one of the guys that had a great influence on my career, he's now retired. His name was Billy Hahn. And Billy's last job was with Bob Huggins at West Virginia. Well, when Billy was a young coach at Rhode Island, he had played at Maryland for a great team coached by Lefty Drizel. Um, John Lucas, you may have heard of John Lucas, who
Yep.
is an NBA assistant now, former NBA head coach, former number one pick in the NBA draft. Um, but Billy was on some great Maryland teams and he didn't play much, but he was coaching at Rhode Island and I got to know him because I worked the camp. And he would come stay at my house in the wintertime when he'd go recruiting in New York. And I took him around New York City and New Jersey. We got to go see this kid. We got to go see that guy.
Right.
So I helped Billy recruit. And when he left to go to Ohio University, he got me the job at Rhode Island. So again, relationships.
Yeah.
And then a year later, they had an opening out in Ohio at Ohio U. And he helped me get that job as an assistant coach. And so you just have to go out and meet people and shake their hand. I mean, you know, you're being a part of Winthrop's program. You got to utilize the coaching staff to let them know you want to get into coaching.
For sure.
My son, Matt, was great at this. Like he'd get out on the court before games, like an hour and a half before games, like when he was playing at Harvard, and he'd go up to the opposing coaches and introduce himself.
Right.
And just say, hey, coach, I want to be in coaching someday. And he got to know Kyle Smith and James Jones at Yale. Kyle's now the coach at Washington State.
Yep.
He got to know all these coaches. They're all friends of his now. And so like even now in your situation, as a player at Winthrop, you're getting to meet a lot of people one way or another.
Yeah.
And so you want to just kind of reach out and, hey, coach, you don't know me. You know, my name's Nate Buss. I play on a team for Coach Kelsey. I love the way you guys play. I want to get into coaching someday. Got any advice for me?
Right.
You know, and then you have to stay in touch with people.
Yep.
You can't be phony about it either. It's got to be sincere.
For sure. So one more thing about like your younger days is like,
sure.
You touched on like the connections, how, you know, that's like a thing that's always been going on. But I'm curious is today my question is it harder today to get into Division I basketball as a GA, VC, all that stuff than it was, you know, 20, 30 years later? Or kind of where do you see, you know, the differences in getting in?
It's always hard because it's a profession where there's a lot more people that want to be in it than there are spots.
Right.
That was true years ago. It's really been true for time immemorial. So, like let me back up and tell you that when I was a young high school and then college guy, played in high school. By the way, when I was in college, I kept playing.
Yeah.
Like I was like a New York City playground guy. Played in every park in New York. You know, traveled around. Could have easily played. I was one of those guys that got better and better because I played so much that when I got to Ohio U, like as an assistant coach, and I'm 23, 24, I'd go down to the rec center and destroy people.
Right.
You know, they're like this 5'7" guy, like, how's this guy so good? You know, but by that time it was, you know, I was into my coaching career. So, but the point was I played all the time, just like you're playing now. And I got better and I got to figure out how to get guys better. Like I know how I improved, how much I improved in my game. So like we used to call, you know this term now, Nate, they call them player skill development coaches in the NBA. Well, we had another name for those guys back when I was a young coach. We called them assistant coaches.
All right, there you go.
Okay. Because when I got into the business, and this is a good lesson for you, I had to know how to teach players individual skills.
Yep.
I had to know X and O's, even at a young age. I had to know how to run a camp. I had to know how to set up recruiting. I had to know how to public speak. My first real boss, Danny Nee at Ohio U, we had great success there in the MAC. He came from Notre Dame, where Digger Phelps is the name you may have heard of.
Sure.
And Digger made his coaches do everything. And Danny trained me as a young coach to learn everything. So even now with yourself, like, don't just be pigeonholed into, oh, this guy's a great recruiter or he's a great VC, video guy. Video is obviously a great way to learn X and O's and scouting. But I, at an early age in high school, I was taking books out of the library. We didn't have like VHS and then compact disc tapes and now the internet and YouTube. You know, I was taking books out of the library and reading basketball books. So, but the point is, you got to become an expert in the game.
Right.
It could be an expert in player development. It could be an expert in man offense. There is so much YouTube coaching stuff going on right now that you have to just dive into it.
Yeah.
And you're lucky to be playing for a great coach and Coach Kelsey. You're learning a lot, but you got to have what I call it. You probably heard this term. I'm 62. I don't look it. I know I just got done walking 5 miles, but, and thank you, by the way, for pushing back our podcast. But I still learn something about basketball every week. So all these 40 plus years, I'm still learning.
Mhm.
And you have to have that mindset at your stage of your career as a player, and then later on as a young coach. You got to keep adding stuff to the repertoire.
Yep.
You got to be great, become a great video coordinator, and even now as a player, learn how to do video.
Yeah.
Talk to the assistant coaches about scouting. Maybe one of the assistant coaches will let you sit in as he's breaking down tape of Campbell.
Right. Yeah.
And just dive in. You got to open yourself up to getting better at all of these areas of coaching every single day.
So, all right, you work for, obviously, I want to get into some ESPN stuff now.
Yep.
I've talked to, Jay Billis, Seth Greenberg, and just like always asking them stories about like just calling the games because I've literally anytime college basketball on, like I am watching it. Like I can't
Yeah.
tell you how many times I've heard you call a game.
Yep.
Big
Yep.
for,
Thank you.
okay,
Thanks.
so the first thing I want to ask you is, what are some of the most memorable games you've called? Like quick ones that come to mind.
Oh, you know what?
Well, there's been a lot, so that might be.
There have been a lot. I would say this goes back 10 plus years now because he was a freshman in college. But Kevin Durant, his freshman year at Texas, Rick Barnes, who I worked for at Providence, he was coaching Texas at the time. And he told me during the summer, he said, I got the best player in the country. And I said to him, you mean you got the best freshman in the country? He goes, no, he'll be the best player in the country. And it was Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And Coach Barnes is a humble guy. He doesn't just spout stuff out. And he was right. Kevin was that good. So I can remember double overtime with Texas A&M, a big rivalry. They were in the Big 12 back then. And there's a guy named AC Law who played in the NBA. Now he's an NBA scout.
Mhm.
And that was an unbelievable college basketball game. It's still shown on ESPN on
Right.
replay. I was there that night, and Kevin Durant in the Big 12 tournament against Kansas. I think Texas was up 20 in the first half. Kansas came all the way back and won.
Mhm.
So that was a great memorable game. Any Big 12 championship game that goes to the wire is an amazing atmosphere because Kansas City is crazy.
Yeah.
Iowa State fans, they've won 4 Big 12 tournament titles in 6 years
Mhm.
with George Niang and Monte Morris and guys that went in the NBA. So anytime I've done like a game like that has been unbelievable. I did the Kemba Walker step back jumper game
Wow.
in the Garden in the Big East tournament when he broke Gary. Who was that? Gary. Oh gosh, big guy from Pittsburgh. He's still playing. Gary McGee.
Okay.
It was they won like 10 straight games at the end of the season, including 5 in the Big East tournament.
Yeah, UConn.
Yeah, UConn, and then I think they went on and won it all.
Yeah,
with Kemba.
I think they did.
Yeah, and so Kemba's run through the Big East tournament, I did the first 3 games he did,
Wow.
and so Big East tournament was unbelievable. I've done like over 1,000 games now, so I've been around so many cool games that anytime a game goes to the wire,
Right.
especially in conference, I just had a game 2 weeks ago, Texas Tech at Oklahoma, and it was an unbelievable game. I coached the last 2 minutes. That's what I love about my job.
Yeah.
Is I think people like the fact that not only do I do my homework and know all the players and where they went to high school and what AAU teams, but in the final 2 minutes, Nate, I take you inside both coaching huddles.
100%.
And I like that. I kind of like that.
Yeah. So
I have fun with this.
no, I can tell it. You do a really good job. And okay, so I want to transition so you said, the way you broadcast a game is different than others because you have that coaching experience. So
we all have a different perspective.
Right, a different perspective. Yep. And one thing I was going to ask you is, how do you see the game? How do you see the game as an analyst versus how you saw the game as a coach? Because it's obviously a different point of view, but I mean, you have the same, thoughts, but I'm kind of curious.
It's the same. Like instead of first of all, I don't have butterflies before a game. And so I don't have those butterflies I had when I was a coach, but I prepare and watch tape just like a coach would. So when I do Gonzaga and San Francisco Saturday night, I've watched tape of both teams. I know it's a big, San Francisco's a heavy underdog. So I'm trying to put myself in Todd Golden's play. Last year, Gonzaga beat San Francisco twice by 4. and in the third game, trail by 9 at the half.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Gonzaga's a juggernaut this year. They're probably going to win easily,
Yeah.
but I'm getting ready to do the game Saturday night. So I'm putting myself in Coach Golden's shoes. How would I keep this game close? 51% of their shots are threes, so they got to make a lot of threes. And then I'm thinking about, if I'm Mark Few, how am I coaching the team?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always kind of putting myself in both coaches' shoes, and I'm coaching both teams. I just don't get a loss. And at the end of the night, I'm just hoping Outback is open till
Got
10.
the best job in the world.
Yeah, it's the best job in the world. Don't tell ESPN. I don't really work for a living. Okay. They pay me to do this.
That's
I get to watch college basketball and talk for 40 minutes.
yeah. I mean,
And I have the perspective of a coach. Hey, if I were Tom Izzo right now, I would do this.
right.
Or I disagree with Bill Self right here, even though he's got a national championship and I don't, I would do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to coach the game, but I'm also trying to teach the game.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is I'm trying to entertain and tell people about these kids and these coaches and these teams that they haven't heard before, like something about San Francisco that they don't know anything about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I try to do every broadcast.
And when you're saying all that stuff, I can just hear it in my.
Yeah. Like, did you know Corey Kispert was a high school quarterback? I bet you didn't know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he was a high school quarterback, and his grandfather played for the New York Jets.
I did know the Wisconsin Badgers do have 4 former high school quarterbacks on the roster. I
I
think.
love that. Trice is one.
Yep.
Davison is another. He was terrific at Maple Grove.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And then
don't tell me. Don't tell me.
I'm not gonna.
Let me see. The kid from Stevens Point, the backup guard, Anderson.
That's my guy, Trevor Anderson. Worked
Trevor
out.
Anderson. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's really good. You're missing one.
I'm missing one, and I know it's not Nate Reavers.
Nope. It was Johnny Davis, the new guy.
Oh wow, freshman. Okay, see, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Johnny Davis. That's cool.
So,
I like that.
okay, we talk about you have the best job in the world. We all know that. Anyone who loves
Yep.
legitimately have the best job in the world.
I do.
So, the things you get to do and experience, like just the fact that, a day of work for you could just be going over to Mark Few's practice and sitting in on Gonzaga. Like,
yes.
Tell me, some stuff about that. Like, just because, like I told you earlier, when my dad went to the state tournament at the Kohl Center, like we just got to go in there and just chill out for a little bit. And like as a team, just shooting around in an empty Kohl Center, like nothing. To me, nothing was better than that. Like that was the best thing ever. And you get to do that as a job. Just kind of talk about like the day-to-days and some memories like that.
Well, people say, how do you prepare? And I go, well, I do this like every day of the year, 365. Like I read everything 365. I'm on the internet. I'm reading books. I got copies of books here. I'm up in Colorado right now where we have a home up here. And so my preparation is like 40, 50 years worth. I'm 62. So like since I was 12 years old, I've been reading about basketball. I'm a historian of the game. But let me give you an example about my work day. There's days I come home and I tell my wife, Georgetown is playing Seton Hall tonight. I got to watch the game for work. I don't even cover their league, but she lets me. Okay. Because I want to know about both teams. And so I'm constantly watching games, constantly reading about the teams. I have to concentrate a little more on the Big 12.
Yeah.
Because I cover the Big 12. But I don't know if you follow me on Twitter at all, but I did the spring and summer. I've been doing coaching videos all spring and summer.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Pick and roll. So I've learned a lot of pick and roll basketball the last 9 months during the pandemic from my international friends.
Yeah.
And so I'm studying the game. So all of this adds up. When I do a broadcast, something pops up in my head. I'm going to tell you one story, Nate, that relates to what you asked me. When I first started at ESPN, it's like 15 years ago. Okay, so when I was coaching, I was at Manhattan College, and we played at St. John's, a big rivalry.
Yeah.
Mid-major versus the high major Big East. We're beating them the whole game. Big East officials make 2 horrendous calls against us, right? And we're down 2 with 5 seconds to go.
Okay.
And so we're out of timeouts. The ball comes in, and my point guard takes 2 dribbles and throws it up from 60 feet. Meanwhile, there's 3 seconds on the clock. So the next day in practice, I said to the whole team, listen, let's put everybody on the baseline and let's time your dribbles. And every single guard could get baseline to baseline in 4 seconds.
Yeah.
And so the lesson was, if you have 5 seconds next time, you can go coast to coast
Right.
and not shoot up a 60-footer. So, and we timed it at practice, and we figured out that you get 1 dribble per second.
Mm-hmm.
So when we throw it into you at the 75-foot mark, you could probably get up the court in 4 dribbles all the way to the rim, and do it in 4 seconds or less. We timed it.
Mm-hmm.
So we did it. We practiced it, and this way now in a game, if it ever came up, when you look up at the clock before you even touch it, it says 6. You say, "Damn, I got 6 dribbles." Okay, so I'm doing a TV game like years later, and it's UAB and Cincinnati in the old, I don't know, Conference USA, before they went to the Big East, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So Cincinnati scores, there's 5 seconds to go, timeout UAB. And I said, Squeaky Johnson, the UAB point guard, if they get this ball in cleanly, he's got 5 dribbles in 5 seconds. Sure enough, he dribbled it 5 times, got coast to coast. Cincinnati didn't want to foul. He lays it into the buzzer. Dribble per second. I now have coaching friends who I've listened in their huddles, and on TV, they'll say, remember, Nate, you got a dribble per second.
Yeah.
5 seconds, we got 5 dribbles. We also timed it so it's 4 dribbles and a pass.
So that game you were talking about, were they down 1?
They were down, they were tied, and they tied the game.
Okay.
So the point is, things happened in my coaching career that I still use on the air.
Right. For sure.
There's one, like Jay Billis says all the time, and no offense to Jay, because he's a really bright guy. Hey, the best time to get an offensive 3-point shot, open 3-point shot off is off an offensive rebound.
Okay.
I said that 18 years ago.
Yeah.
I got to ESPN 17 years ago. And that's something that people pick up and they use.
Oh, I've heard
Ken Palm. I brought Ken Palm numbers to ESPN. You know how the referees come over to the broadcast table now and they say, hey, Seth, we got a flagrant 1 on Nate Buss. You know, on what number are you, Nate?
13.
Yeah, 13 White from Winthrop. We got a flagrant 1, 2 free throws, ball out of bounds to UNCA.
Yeah.
Well, 15 years ago, I refereed at the Big 12 summer officiating camp for their young officials.
Okay.
I refereed. I went to the meetings. I watched the film. We went over the rules with them. And then I refereed AAU games that weekend because I wanted to know what it was like to be an official.
Yeah.
So I got to be great friends with these guys. Now, when I was coaching, I was not great friends with them.
Right.
Trust me.
For sure.
So a couple years after I went to the officiating camp, during a Big 12 game, I said to myself, I'm going to ask them. So before the game, one of the officials comes over, hey, Fran, how you doing? I said, hey, if anything crazy happens in the game tonight, will you come over and tell me so I don't have to guess? Absolutely.
That's crazy.
And so it happened. Guy came over, hey, we got a flagrant 1 on West Virginia, 2 free throws, ball out of bounds. That caught on. I don't know how. Everybody started doing it, and now the NBA officials even do it in the NBA finals.
Right.
So a lot of things I did in coaching now come to fruition when I broadcast a game.
For sure. Yeah, that's crazy that you kind of, I guess that's a trend you started.
It's I want to do my job well, and other broadcasters think, hey, I'm going to do the same thing. It works.
Yeah, for sure.
We all steal from each other.
And like that's just adding more entertainment to the game, to be honest.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
You mentioned Ken Palm. I talked to Ken Palm like a month ago, and the question I asked him was, and by the way, that man is smart. Wow.
Yes, absolutely.
I asked him like, what was like the first time you remember like hearing, someone reference the Ken Palm ratings on like ESPN or like, and then he said Fran Fraschilla was the first one he remembers.
Well, here's what happened. And this is how you talk about relationships and networking. I stumbled across his like stats, a couple of college coaches did, I did, maybe a couple other people. And I looked at his stats and I said, this is really cool.
It is.
Like the average team gets 30% of its own offensive rebounds back.
Mm-hmm.
The average team, right?
Yeah.
But this team, Winthrop, man, they get 43% of their offensive rebounds when they missed. These guys are monsters on the glass. And so I started to incorporate the Ken Palm stats into my games.
Yeah.
And coaches paid attention, broadcasters paid attention. Next thing you know, it's what I would call ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
Mainstream. Yeah.
Mainstream. And so I'm proud of that stuff. But again, we're all doing it. It's all become mainstream, and mainstream happens by accident sometimes.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. Those are cool insights. So then,
Yeah.
I'll let you go here soon, but
Yeah.
the next thing I want to ask you about is your sons. Like, obviously, I grew up in a gym too, and I know they grew up.
Yes.
I've seen a couple pictures of when you were at St. John's. One of your sons was behind you.
Yes.
So first, I want to start with Matt. I had Matt on my podcast. He played at Harvard, and now he's the video coordinator at Villanova. I'm just kind of curious, some early basketball memories with Matt and kind of how it was having him in the gym.
Well, Matt was the younger of the two, so I'm gonna go back and start with James.
Okay, for sure.
It fits Matt. Okay, it fits Matt. James was a good high school player. He was a Division III talent, and he said to me, "Dad, I think I want to be a walk-on."
Yeah.
And I was afraid. I had all these connections around college basketball. I was afraid to ask one of my coaching friends about, "Hey, could my son be a walk-on?" And one of my coaching buddies, Barry Hinson, who's been around forever, he was on Bill Self's staff at the time. I told him the story about, James wants to do this, but I'm afraid to ask. He wanted to be at Oklahoma because in my family, my wife's side, we have a lot of Oklahoma people on her side of the family. So Barry Hinson said to me, and Barry's now at Oklahoma State. But Barry said to me, "That's your son. You got to go ahead and ask Jeff Capel,
right,
who was the coach at the time." I called Jeff Capel and I was like stammering, like, "Jeff, hey, James wants to be a walk-on. I don't know if you take him, but he stopped me. He said, "Coach, I'll take him. Don't even ask. I'll take him. I want him."
Yeah.
And Jeff got fired that year, went back to Duke, and Lon Kruger took over, and Lon kept his word. James spent 4 years as a walk-on. 3 years. Here's what I told him, Nate, about being a walk-on as it relates to coaching. And maybe you do this, but I said, you got 2 jobs as a walk-on, 2 main jobs. Okay. Number one, when your teammates who don't have a car need toilet paper and shampoo, you take them to Walmart.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Like literally, I'm a ride guy.
You're the ride guy. Okay. And number 2, when they want to be in the gym, no matter what hour of the day at night, you go with them.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do a lot of shooting either, by the way.
No, it's none.
And one of his teammates, when he was a sophomore, they had a freshman. And I called him one night. I was trying to reach him. It was like midnight. And I never worry about my boys, but usually I'll text him or something.
Yeah.
And so he texted me back at 12:15. I said, "Hey, what's up, bud? Where were you?" He goes, "Well, you told me to go to the gym anytime a guy wanted to get shots. We got this freshman, Buddy Hield." So My point is, here's my point. Even today in Orlando, when there's a guy on the Magic, and usually it's a younger guy, who wants to get shots up at 10 o'clock at night, they call James. So that's what he's always wanted to do, Nate. Now, Matt's a different story. He went to Harvard. He likes money. I thought he was going to Wall Street.
Yeah.
He tore his ACL as a junior. He was just starting to play and would have played a lot that season because the starting point guard, all league guy, was out for the year. Matt played 3 games. Junior year, was playing 20 minutes a game. And at Providence, where I used to coach, tore his ACL.
Really?
It's one of the heartbreaking moments of our family's life because he was going to be able to play a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He was at Providence where I coached. Their team doctor, who I knew, took him into the locker room with my wife, who was there that night. I'm watching on Fox 1. And the doctor said, "I think it's an ACL." Well, after Matt rehabbed his senior year, he didn't play much because the starting point guard was back.
Mm-hmm.
And Bryce Aiken came in as a freshman, who's now at Seton Hall.
Yep.
Terrific player. But that's when Matt got to Jones for coaching. And I thought he was going to go to Wall Street with this Harvard degree. And he said, "Dad, I think I'm going to miss coaching too much." He made a great point. I said, "Why do you want to get into coaching?" He goes, "I just love being around the office." He loved his coaches at Harvard, Tommy Amaker and the assistant coaches that were there. And he fell in love with coaching because he spent a lot of time with them during his year that he was rehabbing. And so those 2 guys grew up around the game. I didn't force them to get into it. James always wanted to be a coach. Matt figured out late when he got hurt. And now they're doing what I did, and they love what they're doing.
Well, yeah, that's
Probably like you,
great.
being around your dad's teams.
Yeah, no, for sure. That sounds very, very similar to kind of my story with my dad. All right, two more things.
Yep.
I just want to it's called quick hitter. So I'm just ask you a question, get a quick answer, and then I want to
Got it.
All right. So the best player you've coached.
Ooh. So I'll keep it short. I'll keep it 30 seconds. The most talented all-around player I coached was Ron Artest, Meta World Peace.
Mm-hmm.
Coached him his freshman year at St. John's. Another guy that was close, who I recruited but didn't coach him, Jimmy Jackson, who's now on Fox.
Yep.
15 years in the NBA, Ohio State, 2 Big Ten titles. So Jimmy was also great. The best player pound for pound I ever coached was a guy that played at Ohio State by the name of Jay Burson. 5'11", 150, his senior year at Ohio State, the best year in the history of the Big Ten. 27 NBA players. That's when nobody left early.
Mm-hmm.
27 NBA players. He was not an NBA player, but that year we were rolling in a year where the national champion came from Michigan. Illinois had the Flying Illini. BJ Armstrong played at Iowa, played in the NBA on the Michael Jordan Bulls teams. And Jay Burson was 5'10", 150. I don't want to say he dominated the league, but in a league with 27 players who played in the NBA, he was first team all Big Ten. 6 games from the end of his regular season, we were 17-6 with no pros on it, but 29 in the league. Got fouled on a breakaway at Iowa, flagrant one-type foul, broke his neck. Didn't finish out the season, but pound for pound, one of the greatest players to ever play at Ohio State. Cool. 5'10", 150. Okay. Yeah. Next question.
Similar body type to me. Best player you've coached against.
Ooh. I got to think about that one. St. John's as a head coach or assistant,
or just anything that comes to mind.
Oh, that's a good question because I was at Ohio. I was at Providence in the heyday of the Big East with, Mutombo and Mourning.
Peace.
Billy Owens and Derek Coleman back then in the same league. Villanova being great. I would say probably Alonzo Mourning. But I was also at Ohio State back when Michigan had 7 NBA players that year I talked about, 88, 89. I guess Alonzo Mourning comes to mind. I'm probably going to when we get done, I'll probably think of somebody else. But I would have to say he wouldn't be a bad answer.
Not a bad name.
No? Yeah.
All right, last one. Most fun ESPN personality to work with?
Without a question, I've worked with some great people. Brent Musburger, who is a little older for you, but any of your family, your grandparents, anybody who's older knows Brent Musburger, 50 years in broadcasting. He retired from ESPN about 3 or 4 years ago. He's now still at 82, the voice of the Las Vegas Raiders, but he called the Doug Flutie touchdown. He called NBA championships in the 70s. He did a lot of big college football games. I worked 3 years with him in the Big 12, and he's one of the 3 or 4 most iconic broadcasters in the history of broadcasting. For 3 seasons, I did Big 12 basketball with him. It would be like you playing in the same backcourt with Steve Nash or Michael Jordan, or somebody you idolize.
Right.
It'd be like you're the other guard with that guy. I was the analyst with Brent Musburger, which is Keith Jackson, Brent Musburger. There's only a handful of people that are on the Mount Rushmore of broadcasters.
Awesome. Well, that's it. That's all I got for you. But
hey, tell Coach Kels that I was on.
Yes, sir.
Tell him I said congrats so far. Keep it going. Keep everybody safe and healthy. And remember, you got a valuable role, man. I know you're making these guys better. Seriously.
Sure.
Be a coach now as a player.
Will do. Thanks.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right. See you, Nate. You got it, man. Bye.